This is my video on which codes and conventions I think that are very important when looking at the horror genre and why. But to get that through our heads, we need to understand what are codes and conventions. I'm going to start off with codes. Codes are a system of signs which create meaning. Codes can be divided into two categories, technical and symbolic. Technical codes are the ways in which equipment is used to tell the story in media text, for example, the camera work in a film. Symbolic codes show what is beneath the surface of what we see. For example, a character's actions show you how the character is feeling. Some codes fit both categories. For example, music is both technical and symbolic. That is because music can tend to show it tends to show how the character's feeling in certain scenes and situations. So with the music being in place, we get to understand how that scene is set. Conventions are the generally accepted ways of doing something. So there are general conventions such as the use of interview quotes in a print article, but conventions are also genre specific. All genres of film have certain conventions which the audience will expect to see. But why are they important? Codes and conventions are used together in any study of genre. It is not enough to discuss a technical code used such as camera work without saying how it's used in a genre. For example, the technical code of lighting is used in some way in all film genres. It is a convention of the horror genre that side and back lighting is used to create mystery and suspense, same way as any part of any horror movie that you'll see anywhere. I the headphone fell out. Nice. I look I looked at very many codes and conventions. I think these are the most important ones. Scheduled location. Generally, horror movies enjoy placing their characters in a location where there's no one around to help them. For example, the woods, a ghost town, a summer camp, an abandoned building, a dormitory during the off season, an abandoned amusement park, a house in the middle of nowhere. Just the setting really does say a lot about the character types, and what type of film it's going to be based around. The second kind of convention I'm looking at is someone investigating a strange noise. I think it's one of the most unbelievable yet most overused horror movie convention. Um, Let me give you an example. If someone's friends have been brutally murdered, and the character hears a noise coming from elsewhere, it then tends to give them a reason to go and check it out without knowing what could be behind the noise. So that's what I mean when I say it's overused. Yeah, it's very effective. One of the biggest convention is in horror movies is actually the power being cut. This tends to happen at the scariest moment possible. The lights they suddenly go out before anything bad is about to happen. There is some horror movies that doesn't you really look at that convention very much. That would be the classic horror movies, ones that were made in the 1980s. I don't know any good examples. Yep, I don't know any good examples. Another convention is this is more modern, but another convention is the phone lines being cut. Now, the phone lines being cut is to do with power. It's very similar to power cut. Essentially, what it is that when the protagonist is looking for help, they tend to reach out for a type of phone, where it might be a home phone or a cell phone, and something always has to happen to that phone for it to go against what the protagonist wants to do. So they might want to call 911 or call for help, anyone, anything, but there is going to be a factor that prevents them from doing it, which is, again, quite overused, but it's very effective in the sense of it creates tension, sets the tone, it also highlights the character's emotions. So, yeah. One convention that is used widely in the horror genre, but is hardly touched up on, is the fact that characters forget that there is a threat. For example, in the 1980 version of Friday the 13th, the original movie, there is a particular scene where someone tells the people going to the camp that once you enter the camp, you're not going to get out alive. And they seem to just bypass that idea and go anyway, which obviously ends up really bad, but it is what it is. This is a convention that is again used in a lot of horror movies, but hardly in the, let's say, more serious horror movies. For example, movies like Paranormal Activity, or actually no, they are used in Paranormal Activity. Which movies? We'll get onto that later. Anyway, the Convergent is someone running upstairs instead of outside, which is actually kind of if you think about it for a second, it's kind of a comedic thing. So it's more or less used in comedic horror movies. So, for example, the Scary Movie franchise, um, you know, all that business. So yeah, what that basically is the character thinking that upstairs is a much safer place than going outside. Some movies are able to get around the idea to make it look like it's a pointless thing to do if you were to go outside, because that particular scene might be set in the middle of the night, where if something's in your house and you're being chased, the best place to go is probably upstairs rather than outside, because it's midnight. You don't want to go outside in case something else is out there, and there's like less help when you go outside in the middle of the night, obviously. Um, Looking back at sound, there's two types of sound that we need to be focusing on. Is non-diegetic sound and diegetic sound. Non-diegetic sound is the sound whose source is neither visible or on the screen, or nor has been implied to be present in the action. For example, the narrator's commentary, sound effects which has been added for dramatic effect, and mood music. Non-diegetic sound is represented as coming from a source outside story space, so it's kind of outside the movie universe that the movie characters can't hear. And non-diegetic sound is basically the sound that we can hear. Okay. And diegetic sound is the sound whose source is visible on the screen, or whose source is implied to be present by the action of the film. So that is the voice of characters, sounds made by objects in a story, music represented as coming from instruments in the story space. For example, in a movie, someone could be playing a guitar. That is sound that we can hear, they can hear, so it therefore is diegetic sound. Diegetic sound is any sound presented as originated from source within the film's world. So, to make it much easier, another term for diegetic sound is actual sound, and another term for non-diegetic sound is commentary sound. Music. Music is one of the most important aspects of a horror film, as it is helping the film try to create a specific mood for the scene. The effective use of music will help promote even more emotions to the audience. Even though there are a lot of diverse range in the music that has been used throughout different horror films, some of these common conventions include isolated instruments, are often used just before a key event occurs, which helps link the idea of vulnerability. Long suspenseful notes often help contrast with short, sharp notes to help shock the audience. Extreme but intentional changes of pitch tones, for example, low, long notes which suddenly change to very fast, high-pitched notes to make the audience feel immediately tense. Voices. A lot of voices within the horror films have been chosen to reflect fear, tension, and panic. An example of that would be in the Saw films, Jigsaw, the character, the antagonist, his tone of voice is well suited for the part it needs to play, as it effectively creates fear and tension because it is very distinctive, which therefore stands out most from any of the other characters. His voice also helps to create an immediate sense of fear, intimidation, and power because it's a strong, deep tone. Sound effects. There are a lot of sound effects which can occur in the horror film soundtrack, which could include classic. I found out there are lots of sounds that have horror type annotations which help make them recognizable and iconic to the audience, such as crows, bats, owls, church bells, demonic laughing, and more. Echoed voices. This helps heighten the audience mood, sense, and emotion towards the film, which can give a quite ghostly feel. We're going to look at an idea that I didn't know myself a few weeks ago, but now that I've touched up on it, I understand what it is, and it's called a sound motif. A sound motif is a signifier, meaning that sound will only occur when something significant is about to happen. For example, if there's a build-up of a scene, and you can tell that something's bad about to happen in that scene, there will be a sound motif to signify something really bad is going to happen. For example, in the original Ju-on The Grudge, there is this particular scene where someone's walking upstairs and there's slow sound moving up until there's a certain point in the scene where the sound cuts out. Another thing which I didn't know of a few weeks ago, but now I do, is called a sound bridge. Sound bridges can lead in or out of a scene. They can occur at the beginning of one scene where the sound from the previous scene carries over briefly before the sound from the new scene begins. Alternatively, they can occur at the end of a scene when the sound from the next scene is heard before the image appears on the screen. Sound bridges are one of the most common transitions in the continuity editing stuff. That's a mouthful. God. One code, another code. I'm not really good at this, am I? Let's talk about mise en scène. Mise en scène is the setting, lighting, props, and costumes and makeup. So setting is part of mise en scène, and we looked back at scheduled location. So where we talked about the woods, ghost town, summer camp, dormitory during the off season. That is setting, and that's part of mise en scène. Props. Props are another key point of the horror genre, as it can range from a weapon to a spiritual artifact to even just a basic scary artifact. An example of what props can usually be found in a possession movie, for example, are crosses and Bibles. These props are used as signs of religion, faith, or loss of faith. And possessions, movie like The Exorcist and The Exorcism of Emily Rose are rich with these props. A typical location for a cross would either be above and beside of somebody who is going to become possessed, or sometimes it can even be found on top of a Bible. Lighting and colors in horror movies are usually dark and atmospheric. This is used to create an effective setting and surrounding for a common jump scare. An example of this is when a character is walking down a hallway, when they're in the house in themselves and it's dark. The lighting making it dark works as it conceals whatever or whoever it could be hiding in the darkness. The dark is also a common fear among many people, so the usage of it is a play off the common fears of people. If that same scene was shot in the bright day, it would lose the entire effect and atmospheric volume. Last thing is costumes and makeup. Costumes, hair, and makeup is the apparel of characters, and it's very important in the genre as it alone can determine the style of a character and whether or not the character is good or bad. Certain costumes seen in movies come as tropes. For example, you can expect to see a little girl wearing a white dress covered in mud or perhaps even blood, with black tattered hair and with a face that hasn't been washed. This is a trope that combines all of the apparel into one character. Again, within slasher genre, costumes are a big part of the identifying the antagonist. Freddy Krueger is famous for wearing the green and red sweater and for having his makeup design consist of what it looks like burnt skin. Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th wears a hockey mask, but occasionally we've seen what is underneath that, with the makeup department creating a disfigured face. We're going to look at the camera work and editing now. We're going to look at various different shots for the camera work. The first shot we're going to look at is bird eye and high angle. These kind of shots are used in horror and thrillers to make the figure or object that is being looked down or seem completely powerless and vulnerable. We have a close-up. Close-ups in these type of genres are used to see reactions on the actor, actress's face. This is the shot that shows the most emotion from the characters. It is also used to capture detail in an important scene. You have a tracking or panning shot. These shots connotes movement. This is very effectively used in horror and thriller films to make a character look like it's being followed or watched. It could also establish a scene so the audience can see the full view. You have a tilted angle, which is also known as a Dutch angle, whatever. Tilt shots add a lot of dramatic tension to shots and could simplify a supernatural being, for example, pushing or moving the camera. It also is a great way of getting different shots of it, of an incident across to the audience. Another great use for a tilt shot is to act as though the camera is a victim on the floor and you are seeing what they are seeing. So, for example, if a character is laying dead up against the wall and their head might be slanted to the side, there could be a point of view shot that is also tilted, and you have two shots in one. You also have extreme long shots, or just long shots in general. It's a great scene used to establish any scene in the horror and thriller genre. This shot could be put into perspective of how deserted and isolated a certain area may be. Low angles, they're very powerful in a way of they can emphasize just how scary and intimidating a villain is. This could make us, the audience, as well as actors in the film, feel weak and insignificant. And you also have point of view shots. This shot is taken from the point of view of the character. This is where the audience is able to see the film through the eyes of the character. This is popular in these type of movies as the audience becomes emotionally attached to the character after a while, and more scared as the gun, and for example, as a gun could be pointing at them and you see a point of view shot, the audience might feel it's happening to them because they're emotionally attached to that character. And finally, you have the zoom. This could be achieved both in editing and camera work. This adds to the dramatic effect and creates element of suspense and fear as you don't know what you're about to see next. It could also be used to zoom into something gory or gruesome. One other use could be that you zoom into something you wouldn't have spotted before, like a supernatural being. And those are the most important codes and conventions, I think, that are used in horror genre up to date. Thank you.